Hello, everybody. It's Kelly and Jim, and we are thrilled to be sitting down once again with Mr. Rob Bowman. Hello, Rob. How are you?
Good morning, Kelly and Jim. I'm great. Glad to be here.
We're thrilled to be able to talk to you once again.
Absolutely.
That's okay. By the time this is over with, you won't be so thrilled. You'll be bored.
That's hard to believe.
Yeah, yes, definitely. You know,
There's so much about what you do that I still am trying to get a good feel for, like behind the scenes and everything. You sit down, you see those production cards, and then somehow you make magic, and that whole process is, I'm dying to learn more about that.
I will tell you that the trick is remembering to dream while you're on a relentless production schedule, because the physical taxation, the mental taxation, because it doesn't stop, it's unforgiving, the schedule is unforgiving, makes you just want to lay down. But the idea behind the show and how Chris guided the scripts, because there was a lot of nonverbal cinema in the show that I had to teach myself how to be able to forget that my feet were always swollen from standing so much, or that I was just always sleep deprived. That I had to remember that I had to have, many hours to dream, to imagine what was at the heart of the story, who was David in the story, who was Jilly in the story, and then what was the cinematic approach, because they were all different. That was one thing I loved about the show, was I had no idea what kind of script was coming next, certainly to me. And there was, maybe there was a formula, but I never knew what it was, except something weird happened in the first couple of minutes, and then we try to figure out how it happened and who did it, and maybe that. But the rest of it was it's like a brand new journey every time. And so what is this particular journey, and how do I see it, and how do I shoot it, and what is the color of the episode, and what is the light of the, it's just, so it was the best part was being in a high octane kinetic situation, production, and teaching myself to dream almost on cue. So when I would be, in my apartment in Vancouver, or at home later in Los Angeles, forget all the exhaustion, forget anything, and just dream and imagine and draw and write and design. And so that was really fun, because the dreaming is the best part, just going inside and visualizing and watching the scenes play in my head, in three-dimensionally, and then being able to write down what I was seeing in my head after I absorbed the script. So that was, I would say, in general, that was my experience. And there's a lot of people working really, really hard, either from doing this, or doing this and making up ideas for the scripts, or painting and hammering and designing sets. Everybody was working really hard. So it wasn't like, well, I'm so tired and why is it so hard on me? No, everybody was the same.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating to see if you could get through it, because we started in July, and the first exhaustion threshold would hit in August. Like, I can't do it anymore. And we've got till May. Like, well, you better figure it out. And then you'd have I'd hit another exhaustion threshold somewhere late September, early October. And then you'd have a big one. You might have one or two more before Thanksgiving, where you just don't think you're going to survive. And then we would take our two-week Christmas break. And there was more than one Christmas where I would call my mom and dad and say, hey, I love you to death. But I can't come see you for Christmas. I just have to lay here. And they understood. And then you recover for Christmas, and then it was puff up, get back in the gym, get back on the bike, and get ready, because when we come back after the holidays, now we're into the sweeps where we're doing the big episodes. These are the big ones. What about all the ones we did before? Those were big.
Yeah.
No, these are the really big ones. And then figure out a way to stay. I'd like to describe it as creatively agile when you're completely exhausted. And that was another thing to learn, is how to stay creatively agile through the end of the season, every season.
Right.
So there's that.
You had so many decisions to make. You made so many decisions, lighting, this angle, that, the other thing.
Yeah.
And then the final product, it's got to be a lot of pressure on you. How did that feel?
It's not, because I read Frank Capra's Name Above the Title book when I was a teenager. My dad gave it to me. My dad actually met Frank Capra, and so Dad bought the book and gave it to me. And in there, and other filmmakers have said this, and I'm not quoting the book, and I'm not quoting what other filmmakers have said, but the difference is, a director's job is to decide. And there's a big difference between deciding and knowing. And the first time I heard that, I was like, wait, what? Don't you have to know something first before you decide? Yeah, normally, but not as a director. Because there's too many questions, there's too many decisions, and you can't know the answer to all of them. And then you like when I would be doing my homework, or even on set and making adjustments, you have to just trust that when somebody asks you a question, or you have to decide what the camera movement is, or what the performance adjustment is, or what the light is, that you have to trust your gut. And whatever your gut says, you have to trust that your gut instinct is also informed through life experience, through, and I did a lot of academic studies for film and cinema and biographies and how to and all that kind of stuff, is that when you speak in the instant, you give an answer in the instant, that is actually an informed snap decision. And you excuse yourself, you have to disconnect yourself. Well, what would Orson do? Or what would Stanley or Steven do? Well, they're not fucking here. Yeah. You're here.
Right.
And they're not coming, and they're not answering your phone call. You got to just say it. And as soon as you can divorce yourself from thinking that I have to know the answer to everything before I give you'll never get through the day. You'll leave too many questions unanswered. And my example is, the good prop person, prop master, on set prop person comes up to you, or maybe it's in prep, and shows you 3 watches for a guest character. I haven't even cast the guest character yet, so I don't know. And he says, "Hey, I just want to make sure I have the right one for you. Which of these 3 watches would you like?" Well, what's the honest answer? And I says, "I have no fucking idea. I have no clue.
I don't know
I don't know if it's a big guy and he needs a big, burly, thick, fat watch, or if it's a slender guy with maybe a thin neck and he needs a more slender, lithe. I don't know, but that prop person wants to make you happy, wants to make sure that he feels he or she is giving you the watch you want.
Right.
So what I would do is I would just learn. They're not going away. If I say, well, I'm sorry, I don't know yet. I haven't cast that person. You'll have to come back. Well, now I've just put a ×2 on that task for them. They have to now come back to me to ask me the same question. They have a lot of things to do, and I don't want to double up stuff. So in order for them to go check, I asked, he decided, that's done, I would just point at one. Just point at one. And they can go away happy. Oh, he decided, I know, I got the right watch for him. He's happy with the watches. Why? Because the other 2 fucking watches are on the truck.
Yeah, and if you need
so if I go to set and the actor walks in and he's a skinny guy with a big giant watch. I could go, sorry, that watch doesn't work. Do you have a thing? Oh, sure. Yes, sir. Then run back to the trailer and is this one better? Yeah, that fits the character now. So, but the machine is working.
Right.
And Frank Camper's example was, he'd be in prep and, the studio has a seamstress on payroll. Her job is to sew, make dresses, whatever. And they would come and say, would you like her in the green dress or the red dress? Well, he doesn't even know who the actress is yet. He doesn't know his color palette yet. He doesn't know what the locations are. He doesn't know if it's a day scene or a night scene, interior scene. He doesn't know. But that lady wants to go sew something. So you say, give her the green dress. It's the green dress. I'm sure of it. And then the lady would go off and make the dress over a course of time. And then during that time, he would cast the actress. He would have some of the locations, maybe her locations, and he would have his color palette because he and his DP worked out the color palette. And then he would walk on set, or maybe they would come back after there was a fitting with the new actress in the green dress. And he would go, wait, why is she in a green dress? Well, you said you wanted her in a green dress. No. I need her in a red dress. Well, all she does is sew. So now she just runs back upstairs and sews her a red dress. The style of the dress is great, but it's got to be red. Now it's red, but at least the machine is working. You have to understand that it is a machine and everybody has to get through their work. And unless you just speak and give answers, not maybe knowing what the answer is, the machine will not work. And then you show up and you look around in the desk or the drapes that you chose or the car that you chose, whatever. Hey, it all seems to kind of come together. I didn't know what the fuck I was talking about when I was answering these questions. Actually, yes, you did, because it comes from your gut. And your gut has all those answers. They're not comforting. It's not like, well, I read 3 books and then I gave you that answer. No, I just came out. But because it comes from one soul, from one, I'll bravely say, one artist, there is a point of view in there. And you learn that when you're answering questions, there is a point of view coming out of your soul that doesn't necessarily have to be singularly educated in this particular question, because you don't know what the question's going to be. How can you study for 1,000 questions a day that you don't even know are coming? You can't. So this is where that just sort of leap as an artist, I feel like painting this today. And then you look at it and go, where did that come from? I didn't know that was going to come out.
Makes
So
sense.
that's a lot of the experience of how to survive, learning how to make the moments more efficient, is just to keep going forward. And then you have the parachute of, I'm not done making any part of this show better until I say cut print. Once I say cut print, that moment is done. And if you messed it up, too bad, it's gone. And you just keep going forward. And after a while, it's okay that I haven't read every single book in the world, and I haven't studied every single filmmaker in the world, and I haven't seen every single movie. I've seen most of them. And I've read a lot of biography, and I've read a lot of how-tos, but I think, how did all that happen? Those are, I would say, some key ideas, some key recollections as to how we got through it.
Definitely amazing.
Yeah. There's a lot involved in it, the mythology or the standalone. My opinion, it was the mythology more harder to direct than just the standalone episodes.
No, I can't say they were harder. They all hurt. They all hurt to make. They hurt if you care. If you care that they're great or as good as you can make them, then there's a lot of suffering because of what I just said. You don't actually know. It's just like, I don't know. I had a vibe, and so I went with my gut vibe thing. But it's sort of undefined. I like both of them. The only thing with me is I have And I must have been born or raised with it. I very high bullshit meter, and if it looks like it's fake or whatever, then I'm sorry, it's fake, because I pretend that I'm just a person at home watching it. And so the monster episodes, you got to understand it. Yeah, X-Files is a big show, but we're still making a new one every 8, 9, 10 days, whatever it was. And that's fast. And so when you make a monster who has a suit, there's a real, even though if Chris would get ahead and say, hey, in 4 episodes, we're going to make monster. So we need to make a suit. And so you do drawings, and then maybe you do a maquette, sculpture, whatever. And then they go make the rubber suit. And then the rubber suit shows up on my set, and, the drawings are terrifying. And maybe the sculpture or the final drawing is terrifying. And then it's a guy showing up in a rubber suit who can't see. And his fingers wiggle because they're rubber and extended, or whatever. And I just go, I'm not going to photograph that. I'm not going to photograph it fully. I'm going to turn off all the lights, and I'm going to light the little parts of the monster that actually may be scary. Why? Because the literal version, that guy, that creature guy in that rubber suit, is not scary in any way. But if I can show slivers of it, bits and pieces of it, then I engage the audience's imagination, and they can fill it out, because that's way better, right?
Absolutely.
Certainly not in a TV show, and at certain times, not even in a movie when you have more time. If you can engage the audience's imagination, there's no boundaries.
Right.
And then each person in the audience gets to kind of fill out the monster in their own way. Now you have an engaging experience.
Right.
So I told Chris, I said, I can't do the guys in the rubber suit. And if you put a guy in a rubber suit on my set, you're not going to see him. Well, the suit's going to cost $5,000, $10,000. He's like, well, I'm not going to put, Chris never said this, but I'm not going to put a $10,000 thing in front of Rob if he's not going to shoot it. So, I'm sure we still did, and we certainly did in the movie. But I leaned towards the mythology episodes early, because the early parts of it, revealing it, unfolding it, were really like taking the audience's eye and moving it towards a peephole when it starts out as a little circle and you can't see what it is on the other side of the door. And as you move closer to the peephole, your view expands, right? And then you see whatever's in the foreground. And so those early reveals of the elders, of the cabal, whatever, were fascinating. Like, what are they up to? We're talking about Operation Paperclip, or whatever we did. I found those really compelling. And so I leaned towards those because I liked them. I liked watching them. And it also meant that it was a very good chance I wouldn't have a guy in a rubber suit on my set. So, but I love them all. I did both. I love them all. But and not that Chris did anything that I asked him to do, but I just let him know that I preferred the mythology episodes, and I just didn't do as many monster episodes as Kim did or anybody else. And so maybe Chris said, I mean, he's going to lay out the year. He's going to, all right, we're going to do, a 2-parter mythology, and then we're going to do a monster episode. He's not going to look at it and go, oh shit, that's Rob, so we can't do no, he's going to do whatever he needs to do for the show.
Right.
And so would I, I was also wanted to be a good soldier, but, I mean, they're all fascinating. The doing the mythology episodes, I had to track what did I already say? What did this,
right.
Right, and where are we now? As it got further and further, it got so layered that eventually it's like, is the audience going to figure this? It's easy to figure out in the end. By the way, if you pull back the curtain, there's these bad guys controlling all the bad shit. What? After a while, and you start adding layering it to it, and then betrayal and reversals and exposure, it got a little tougher to tell those stories. Because luckily the show went on long enough that we had the honor of having to make a lot of them. And you get 15, 20 plus episodes, 30 episodes down the road of Mythology. All right, so what's the new bang? What's the new reveal? You know, it's so thick. But anyway.
See, I would have thought your answer was the opposite, because with the Mythology, you do have to track what you've done in the past, and within a standalone episode, it's pretty much free reign.
Yeah.
I would think that those would be more fun for you because you're in complete control pretty much.
I do believe that I was a glutton for punishment back then. Like, I couldn't work hard enough. Like, just make it worse for me. Because I'm going to pull it off. I'm going to prove that I can solve this new, bigger problem. So I never shied away from the scale of any script or this one's going to be hard. I liked them hard. I also realized that there was some continuity between the level of difficulty in executing a particular story, and the watchability of it. You know, like I realized the harder they were to make, the better they were to watch. And occasionally you do a smaller script that might be a little easier to make. And yes, for the artist or the crew or whatever, it's like, hey, it's not that expensive and looks like we're going to hit the budget number this time. Those episodes were less watchable. So for me, it was like the harder it was, the worse it was, the better off it was in the end. The easier it was, the less expensive it was. Those episodes didn't interest me as much.
Interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Makes sense.
Yeah. Was there any episodes? Are you the kind of guy that, you know, you directed an episode, that's it, you're happy with it, it's done? Do you ever like go back, reminisce and go back and say, well, I wish I would have done this a little different, or if I could redo this episode?
I mean, off the surface, no. Because I did so much prep.
Right.
Or I trusted my instincts, and I believed, I'm not saying it's true, but I believed I understood the show at its core. I cannot, I mean, would I direct them differently now? Well, probably, because
right,
technology's changed too. So
it's not that, it's that your dexterity expands over time. But I can tell you, I was all in on every show I directed. So I cannot look back and say, oh, I missed that one. I mean, maybe I did miss it, but I don't think I did. So no.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. You know, back in the day when it was, you know, when it was airing on primetime, you know, and especially the end of the season, and you had the cliffhangers and stuff, you know, and it was a cliffhanger, and I was like, you're fucking kidding. You're going to end it right here. I was like throwing crap at my TV, you know. I was like, no, don't do this, because back then,
had to wait
almost a whole freaking year, you know, for it to, you know, to find out what the hell happened.
Yeah.
And then I loved what you guys did. What you guys did was you gave us a little bit, but then you pulled the rug out from underneath us, you know. You let us see some stuff, but then you're like, no, you didn't see it. You brought us back, you know.
That's called prove, disprove. So if Mulder can prove something, then just around the corner, somebody else more influential would disprove it.
Right.
And so you know, it's climbing up a slippery hill, you know, 3 steps up, and then you hit the moss and you slide back down. That's what it was, because a lot of it was unprovable. That you couldn't have real world proof that there's aliens.
Right.
Not on a mass scale. So you're always in, well, I believe they're here. I believe they're there. Okay, well, that's what you believe. Can you prove it? No, but you know, how can you look up at all those stars and say we're it? That's like, you're not even curious. And so Mulder obviously is more than curious. But yeah, the prove, disprove made the I figured it out. Oh, shit. No, it's not true. It didn't happen.
Right.
Or it did happen,
It
but
did.
they're gonna hide the truth, stuff like that.
I loved the show. I loved it so much, but then again, it pissed me off so much because it ended at friggin' cliffhangers, and then I was pounding my head on the table, and then they're telling you the stuff, then they take it away. I'm like, they're just doing this crap on purpose, just to mess with people.
Absolutely.
Hey, what happened when you got really mad at the storytelling? What happened? Did you stop watching the show?
Absolutely not. No way. No. No, this stuff was like, the show was like a drug. I needed my fix.
Yeah. My point is, the goal is not always to make them happy.
Right.
Right.
The goal is, this is really gonna piss them off.
And that's
coming back.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, and I and it attracted more fans and more fans. I mean, you had to. Were you in amazement of how huge the show just? Exploded.
Every inch of it, because when I started on the show, it was on Fox. Who was watching Fox? I don't know.
I was.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, really, like nobody.
Exactly.
So then I'm up in the forest in another country shooting silhouettes and shadows and creepy, and there's long sequences where nobody's even talking. It's just, choreography and lurking through. Am I going to get jumped? And like, well, we can kind of do whatever we want because nobody's watching this thing. So let's just go for it. Let's not hold ourselves to anything that the networks were doing. Let's just go a whole different direction because nobody's paying attention. And then, they were. A little bit were. And then we got into, I'm not going to get this exactly right, but when season 2 began, and then where all these other viewers come from? And then we got like halfway through season 2 and it went boom, it went again. And I thought, well, that'll be it, because it's so off path from everything else that we've sort of hit that niche market and fringe, whatever you want to call it. It's already kind of too bigger than I ever thought it would be. And then halfway through the second half of season 2, when we're doing submarines and ice and whatever else we're doing, it exploded again.
And they kept doing it.
And then by the end of season 2, I was like, that's it. It will not get bigger than this. And before season 3 started, it was even bigger. And then the next thing you know, it's this global thing. But I got to tell you, it was really, and I don't really understand the music industry, but it was like these kids in Seattle, in the 90s, they were making this like, well, this is not polished rock. This is sort of garage rock, grunge rock. But nobody's going to listen to it. We're just anti-establishment. And then next thing you know, pop rock is dead, and it's only Dave Grohl and Nirvana and Kurt and Pearl Jam, and that's the big thing. It felt sort of like that, but we're actually intentionally off path from everything else on television. So we're likely to be dismissed as some aberration, but those of us who were there were really into it, and there was a place for us, and then we didn't have to, shoot it anything like network. I mean, if you shot anything conventional, if I did, I got a call from Chris. What is this shit? But I was in a hurry or whatever. You're like, yeah, well, you're reshooting it. That ain't the show. Yes, sir. They're like, well, reshoot it. But I think the thing that I would personally was there was whoever was in charge of exposing the show to the whole world it had nothing to do with me. And how we got there was me thinking, very myopically about how I would personally tell these stories. And then Nutter would come in and he would tell them his way. And, I didn't interfere with any of the other directors because I wanted them to take their own journey, and it wasn't my job to tell anybody how to direct. I mean, I could try, but so I just stayed as the outside noise got louder and became like a stadium of standing ovations. I taught myself to just look up from my blinders, say thank you, be gracious, be grateful, and then look back down. And don't make it about the popularity of the show. Don't make it about fame. Make it about focus on artistry. You know, because Chris is an art monster. You know, when he would write notes, they were written as though he was your art teacher. And, you know, in light and shadow and mood and rhythm and tempo and all these things that speak to a filmmaker or an artist, right? He was great at that. He was great at that. And sometimes he would write a note. I'd have to look up some of the words. What does that mean? It's a really cool polysyllabic word. What is that? Oh, that's light and shadow, you know, or whatever. So just the whole time, just kept my eyes away from any of the fame part of it, any of that. I'm glad everybody liked it. But I thought I cannot change course because more people like the show. I cannot change course because I don't know what the other course is. I still have to listen to my gut. I still have to let my studies, my academic studies, inform how I'm shooting this, plus whatever Chris is asking for. So I just stayed the course, and I never got caught up in, you know, why is David and Jillian doing all the interviews? Well, it's because they're the stars. That's why they're doing all the interviews. You know, I didn't know, keeping track, you know, and usually when they come interview me, I was on set shooting, and, you know, when can we have 10 minutes with you? Well, besides never, I don't know. I'll try to come up with a really big shot that'll take them 15 minutes to set up, which has to work in the show. I can't just make up something fake and then we go outside, interview me. And all I was trying to do is get those interviews over as fast as possible so I can get back to it. Because if Bob Goodwin, you know, our Vancouver godfather, would walk out of the office and I was sitting there talking to a camera crew, he would rip my head off. Get back in there and get shooting. And so it was like, I know publicity, it's my job to do some of these interviews, but, you know, just as little time as possible.
Yeah. I'm glad you did listen to your gut and didn't let all that sway the story, because I think that's when TV shows get messed up, when they start listening to all the noise from the fans and stuff and they go off course.
Well, look, when somebody you don't know who lives on the other side of the planet says that they love you, they love me. They don't even know me. What do they know? My name was attached to a cinematic experience they had. But they don't know me, so they don't really love me. They may love what I do and what I give them, but they don't know me. So you can never take that love personally.
Right.
That I am loved, right? Because one day the show's going to end, and does that mean now they don't love me? No, they never loved you. So don't get too high on it and don't get too low when the phone stops ringing, because none of that stuff is true. The only thing they like is if they like the way I deliver stories to them, great. Then I fulfilled my obligation as an entertainer and as a filmmaker. But they don't know me, so I don't. That's the problem with fame, is if you think people in 180 countries all say they love you and you actually own that, you're in for a big letdown.
Right.
That's
one day there's going to be Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
And they're going to go love a Game of Thrones. They're not going to even remember who you are. It doesn't mean they don't love you anymore. They never loved you. They just, if you don't give them the show anymore, then they just go do something else.
Right.
Well,
back in the day when the internet, you know, started coming on, you know, and it started taking off, it's been said that the producers and writers and stuff, you guys would pay attention to like the chat rooms. You know, were you involved in any of that?
I was asked to, and I started doing it, and then it became a place for them to complain and talking about wardrobe and stuff. And I was there to like, hey, ask me questions. I'll give you inside info, you know, whatever I can. And then I realized it was too much of it was a place for them to pick on decision making, and you realize when I didn't have time for it, but when it really became, I don't know, it almost seemed punitive at some point.
Yeah.
I'm done. I don't need this. No, I'm not doing it anymore. So I stopped doing it. I think I did it for maybe a few shows, like I would say 2 or 3. But when some of the notes were, I just felt that they weren't about anything important. They were just being picky, and I just didn't want it. So I stopped doing it.
Well, I would think you need to be able to trust your decisions and have confidence in your decisions, and going on there and hearing people pick them apart is not going to help with that. So makes sense.
Yeah. If they don't like the show, don't watch it.
Exactly. There are other shows. There are other networks.
Plenty of shows. Yeah.
Yeah.
We loved the show. So.
Yeah. Then you went and did Fight the Future.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about that in the other interview a little bit. At the end product, were you totally satisfied?
No.
No.
Do you want to tell us why you weren't satisfied?
The prep was rushed for a bunch of reasons I don't want to talk about. The prep was rushed. It affected my ability to get the kind of people, the crew people that I thought who wanted to do the movie, but when they found out the length of prep, they said, we don't have enough time to prep. The studio, I believe, thought it was going to be like a little $30 million, I don't know, like a fat episode.
Yeah.
And we had worked for 5 years to build that show up. And this is not the reason that we made an X-Files movie, but I did say to Chris, I think when I was making Endgame, I said, and all I wanted to do was compliment him, to applaud him, is I said, the idea behind this series will stick on a big screen because it's a big idea. And I just wanted to say that. And then he called me, I don't know, a year or 2 later and said, we're going to make a movie. And I remember saying, hey man, look, you don't need to say that to me so that I'll stay on the show or something. I'm fine. But if you're going to say it, you just don't make a promise that you're not sure you're going to keep, because I'll get excited. And he said, no, I'm going to keep the promise. So I bought him a bicycle as a visual reminder. This bike means that you promised me we were going to make the movie. And so you're going to look at the bike either in your office or your apartment, and you're going to, oh, fuck, that's right. That means I got to make the movie because I promised him. And so, when it came time to do it, I was full force, all in it, deliver a big cinematic version of the series, deliver some new ideas to the audience. And Chris did go to the studio as the script was revealed. And Chris fought for the budget we needed. And he had to go back many times. And when Danny and I would go to Chris and say, in order for us to do this is what we want. And it was more money. Chris was not happy with Danny and I, because he had to put together a presentation to go to the studio and say, hey, remember when I came in and I said, I wasn't there, but I came in and I said, I need another 8 million. They go, yeah, actually I need another 15 million, and they yell. And those dudes who run the movies, they yell well. They know how to yell at you. And oh boy. And so we were putting Chris through these meetings, asking for more and more money, but he did it. He did get mad at Danny and I a lot about it. But he went and did it. I didn't have to do it. I didn't have to have Bill Mechanic or Tom Rothman or anybody yell at me. Chris
Right.
did it, you know. And so Chris did fight for the version of the movie that we wanted. But I think it was just the prep, and then by the way, nothing that I'm saying has anything to do with whether the movie was any good or not, at all. And I had I don't know, 2 or 3 years to think about it, and maybe I overdreamt, you know. And but the reality is that, you know, movies cost a lot of money, and I probably had an idyllic version of what that experience was going to be like. And it wasn't like that, but that maybe I didn't dream the right dream. I probably didn't. But I was always grateful the whole time. I don't care how miserable I was or how tough it was or anything. I was always grateful that Chris kept his promise and that we made the movie. I think the biggest thing is the movie did not end with a bang, because it needed to end open-ended, because we still had more series to go.
Right.
And if you go period, the end, exclamation point, the end, close the book, maybe some people won't watch the show anymore.
Right.
And none of us wanted that. So the movie had to serve a certain purpose. And we wanted it to be open to people who had never seen the show.
Right.
Which is tough to do when you got a very layered mythology and you have all this history, and then you have to realize, by the way, you may be like super popular, but there's a lot of people who don't give two shits about your show. And so we want to market it. So we go, hey, you folks who've never seen it, you should check this out. You might find it interesting. And so it did serve the purpose it needed to serve. But that was, I mean, it's a fact. It was 15 months of misery. And in the first 2 months, one of my partners on the show, not Chris, we didn't say it to him, was like, oh my God, this is so hard. And I said, yeah, and it's going to be like this for 15 months. So buckle up.
Yeah.
This isn't going to change. This is not going to, I go, no, it's not going to change. This until they rip it out of our hands and they throw it in the movie theaters. This is how you're going to feel every single day. And I hope we do some things along the way where you go, oh, that was great. That was cool. You know, wow, look what we did. And there was plenty of them, a lot of them. But it was 15 months of self-imposed misery.
Well, I got to tell you, you know,
and I'd do it again. I'd freaking do it again. I mean, I went and made Rain of Fire, which took 2 years to make.
right. But the movie, I got to tell you, I totally enjoyed it. I went and saw it 13 times in the theater, you know. I totally enjoyed it, you know. I mean, just to see it on a big screen back then was just absolutely freaking mind-blowing, you know.
Yeah.
And let's go back to what you said before. You said you bought Chris a bike.
Yeah.
Do you know what kind of bike that was?
No.
You don't. This right here.
Oh,
I mean,
shit. Here we go.
This right here. Here's a photo. Here, let me throw that up.
Can you see it?
Can you see it?
Yeah, but that looks like my studio bike.
Studio bike?
I mean, that's not me in the picture, is it? I don't think so.
No,
I don't think so.
God,
That's sort of, although that bike looks like it has.
It looks like Chris to me.
it looks like Chris to us. It's hard to tell.
Because he's got that hat bill over his face.
Oh, that is Chris.
Yeah, it looks like Chris.
All right, lift it up a little bit.
Yeah, the glare.
Maybe it was a long time ago, but that looks to me more like a studio bike.
This photo with a bunch of other photos, Chris donated this to us, you know.
Oh, cool.
Hand me those over there. And there's a few other ones, you know.
And by the way, I want to put one amendment to your question about was I happy with the movie. The thing that bothered me the most about making the movie was not the production difficulties, was not That happens. It was that I couldn't use the Vancouver crew.
Right.
Yeah, you've said,
And
yeah.
I know I said that, but I want to say it again because it's a big deal. Those people went so far above and beyond expectation week to week, you know, delivering sets in impossible time, possible time frame that were gorgeous because they love the show, not because we were paying them for it or paying them extra for it, because they love the show. And they built the show, you know, hammer and nail. And when I found out I couldn't bring any of them down, I was like, but they deserve it. They earned it. They made it.
And they know
Part of
it.
the reason the show is the show. And now I've got, you know, a lot of top people who are making all A-list movies, but it doesn't mean it has no emotional component to those people. And feeling like I had to start from zero with rallying this Hollywood film crew together was a hill I didn't expect to climb. And I never really got there. I mean, everybody was professional and everybody did their job, but it wasn't, there was obviously no shorthand, which had been highly developed in Vancouver, where I could just look at something and go, we know just what to do. And then we just go do it. I understand a word. So that, I think that will always bother me. I'll never get over it. I understand what it was. You can't touch the golden goose. They need to rest, and they do. So I understand all the practicals of it, but that was a gift I wanted to give them, although they may want to return the gift after they realized they were not going to have any time off between seasons. Yeah, I felt I will always feel very strongly that I wished I had my Vancouver crew. Do I think my Vancouver crew who made the TV show could make a feature? Yeah, 100%. They could have stepped up. We could have figured out the anamorphic lenses. We would have done all that.
Do you think it would have changed the film, been different?
It would have been better. It wouldn't change the story we told.
Right, absolutely.
It would have dramatically changed my life for the better. Because it could be, by the way, it would just be like, hey, look what we did. Now let's go do this. You know, it could be that. Plus, you know, and on a much less important scale, it made my life incredibly difficult because I had to teach a whole new batch of people like what this show is and whatnot. But in terms of the quality of it, the quality would have been higher. There's no doubt about it. So, but you know, I'll end with saying I'm grateful we made it. I will always be grateful we made it. And I'll always be grateful to Chris for keeping his promise. And I always be grateful to Chris for allowing me to direct it, because he didn't have to.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, especially if they were still doing the show. So.
Right. Yeah. You know, one thing we have here is I love the behind the scenes, like all the photos, you know, Chris kept so much stuff.
To be continued. Be sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next video. You're all going to want to see those behind the scene photos.